Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing okay. Apologies for my voice, first of all. It's like 9:05 on Sunday morning. My dad took one look at the clock and went back to bed. There's no coffee yet, so we are sans coffee. I started this process last night and I figured that some of you might be interested in how I did it, so I thought I would get ahead of the comments and make a video. I'm not gonna do like a literal step-by-step, I'm just gonna tell you how I got this far, and then I guess I'll show you some of the rest. So I am deconstructing a hobonichi cousin. I'm using the Avec because I thought it might be easier, and I was too nervous to deconstruct the original cousin that I have. It's the full book and I have like, I don't know, like 50 or 60 pages in it maybe this year, and I didn't quite want to risk cutting into that. All the stationery I buy comes from the money I make from this channel, which is not very much, so it doesn't feel quite so horrifying to experiment with it a little. I hope this is helpful to someone. But basically what I did, oh, and this is very much inspired at the moment by Ella Nim. If you aren't familiar with her channel or her blog, you should definitely check her out. She's currently using a D-bound cousin in rings, and it looks really cool. I've also seen a few people on Reddit and stuff over the years and on Japanese blogs do the same thing, and so I did not come up with this. The first thing I did was take the Avec. Here are the two halves of my cover, by the way. I took the Avec. This was last year's, and what I did was try to find the midpoint of the book. This is normally a place where you can trim the threads. Oh, this one. Okay, so this one has threads. So then what you want to do is, or what I did anyway, was I cut the threads. I used my scalpel to pick the threads undone, and then I pulled the first few leaves out. And what I mean by that, bear with me because my bookbinding terms are not up to scratch at the moment. But I took the first few like double pages out. I think I took maybe 3 out, and then once I had removed 3, I was kind of left with like a gap. And instead of looking for the next set of bound pages, what I did was fold the book open and kind of gently pull it apart. And then I used my scalpel again to kind of like not like saw into it, but just to run it down the middle of where the glue was. I only had to do that, I think, twice, gently, before it started to come apart, and then I was able to pull it gently by hand and then kind of use my knife to push where it got stuck. Again, very gently. There was no sawing, there was no like deep cutting, it was just like a really gentle kind of running it along, and then just kind of like almost touching the knife to the glue on the inside. Once I had done that, I had 2 parts of the book. They kind of came apart as one with the cover still attached. And then this is my second half, still intact, and you can see here the glue, some of the glue is still on the spine. I did remove the covers, which was fairly easy. You have to go back as far as obviously the leaf, which attaches at the end paper, and then the first page, because that's where they're attached, they're glued here. So I took these off, and as you can see, I kind of just peeled them. It wasn't very difficult. To be honest, the whole thing has been a bit easier than expected. I don't want to jinx myself, but it hasn't been too terrible. I would not be making this video if I was nervous. But I just peeled the covers off the front and the back, and then I was left with this. I spent last night doing this side. This side is now completely deconstructed into a few leaves, or a few groups. They kind of have varying size. Some of them are just 1 or 2 pages, and some of them are like 3 or 4 pages, depending on how the binding was done for where the book is at the time. And I have taken them all apart. So the next step after this will just be to trim off the messy edge, and then I can punch them. I'm really surprised at how easy it's been, in air quotes maybe. I say nervously, I don't want to mess this side up. But it hasn't been anywhere near as scary or hard as I thought it would be. Hence why I thought I would make the video so you can see. So that's the first half, and this is the second half. So I will show you how I did it, I think, for this half, and I'm not going to talk the whole way through the video. You can just kind of watch me do it. But again, what I'm gonna do is find the next leaf. Move this over slightly. So I'm looking for the next group of threads, which is here, and then I'm gonna unpick it, like I said. You have to be careful doing this. The first one I cut, I stuck my knife through the other side of the book, which wasn't ideal. Obviously you don't want to do that. If you're using a sharp blade, it's very easy to do. So those are unpicked, and then I just start pulling the leaves out. There might be an easier way to do this, but this is what I worked out while I was doing it. So that's what I have found to be, you know, not so terrible, and then I think it might be easier for cutting too, hopefully. And then you're just going to pull them for as long as you can. And then this one as well. So this one, it will be partly glued, so you kind of have to gently sort of detach it from the glue side. Again, you don't need to be tough with it, you can just gently let it do the work for you. So you just want to apply a little bit of pressure, and then it should sort of pop off. You don't really want to be cutting it, because I think that's where it can get kind of messy looking, and that's where you can end up getting wiggly edges. I'm trying to keep things as neat as possible because I'm a bit of a neat freak. I like a small touch of perfectionism, and I know that if I have wonky edges in my binder, I'm going to be stressed about it. So I'm trying to be super careful in how I deconstruct so that there's no damage done at this point. And then I'm going to do it again, and I'm just going to go through the whole booklet until I'm done, basically. When you get to the end, you end up with a stack of like 4 or so pages. This is the top stack, and there's quite a lot of glue left on it. I figure I won't worry about trying to peel all this off, I'll just trim it off with everything else. Again, just to keep things neat. But that has been my process so far. If you miss a stitch, you'll know because there'll be too much resistance when you're trying to pull them out. You do not want to force them. Go back and cut the stitch. Difficult. I'll try it from the bottom. This is definitely the point where it starts to get harder. What I might try and do is just cut this from the binding. Or maybe I don't even need to cut it. That middle bit is still very firmly stuck, so I'm gonna be cautious and just keep cutting. And there we go, there's our second half. Obviously this is all the binding glue on the threads. It does get a bit kind of gross, it's a bit messy. but my pages are relatively intact and clean. So then what I need to do is use either a guillotine, like a paper cutter, or a ruler and a scalpel to trim off the edge. I want to try and take off as little as possible. I don't really trust our guillotine. The one that I have that you might have seen in previous videos doesn't really cut straight. It's one with a wire, and I feel like it always makes a wiggly line at the top, which is very annoying. I cannot be dealing with those kinds of imperfections. It is a source of frustration. My dad lent me sort of like a bigger guillotine. It has like a pull down handle. It has no guard on it. He was like, please do not cut a finger off. I don't know if I will use that maybe. I'm not familiar with it. I don't know how much I trust that either. I might just use a scalpel and kind of like a steel ruler. My aluminium ruler is wonky from cutting so much stuff with it, but my dad lent me a steel one, so that one will stay straight. And then I just want to take off like a teeny tiny, you know what I mean? I'm gonna try and find somewhere to line it up, maybe against one of the squares on the inside so that it's the same every time, in theory. That might be the best way to try and do it, I think. Okay, so I'm kind of lining my ruler up 5 squares in, and I'm cutting this side to take the little sliver off. My only fear being that my scalpels are not the best quality. They're pretty cheap, and this one is old and a bit wonky. So I need to cut very carefully for the thin strip so I don't tear the paper. I am not always the best with a scalpel, to be honest with you. I have had a few injuries over the years. But I'm just gonna try and see how I get on. I might not include the footage just in case I'm like nose pressed against the ruler. But that's how I'm doing it. I've lined the ruler up on this side from one of the squares to keep it straight, and then I'm just gonna try and trim off this very thin strip and see how I go. Fingers crossed it works. And then for the weekly pages, I'll have to try and measure them up to these ones and see if they're different, how they look. But I'm just kind of trial and erroring my way through at this point, so I will get back to you in a second. Okay, that's my first one. It was okay. Don't want to jinx it, but it worked. So I'll put the finished pages to one side, and hopefully we can keep it as neat as that. Obviously, I've got a little bit of crumpling going on, so if you're a worse perfectionist than me, maybe don't try. Also, obviously, if you're not sure about rings, like, maybe don't. Like, it's a lot of money to be cutting up. I'm not afraid to admit that. However, I am kind of firmly in the camp of someone who just cannot seem to make a bound book work for the life of them. But I am a really big fan of hobonichi, even with the paper troubles this year. It doesn't really affect me too much because I don't use a lot of mixed media, but the bulking is a problem for me. It kind of always psychs me out halfway through the year, so I get 3 or 4 months in and then I start panicking in advance. So I'm just genuinely curious to see if this is a solution for me. I really want to keep using the cousin, but bound in a book kind of stresses me out. And I'm just curious. To me, this is a decision that makes sense. It almost feels inevitable in some ways. I think once people started doing this, I was always going to have to try it eventually. But if you're on the fence, please don't rush into it. Just give yourself some time to mull it over. It's not as hard as I thought it would be to do this, but it is obviously a decision that everyone should be making independently. I'm also just going to use a pen to mark the 5 square mark every time, just so that I don't mess it up. Obviously the hobonichi paper is so thin and so light that you don't have to press very hard when you're cutting it. You just want to, again, run it along very gently. Like, there doesn't need to be any kind of like firm, I don't know, firm movement, if you will. You just run it super softly. Otherwise, that's how you chew the paper, which is what happens to me when I stop paying attention, is that I chew paper. But let's see. Oh my god, so far, so good. So at this point I have a pretty good stack going, and you can see that they are mostly level. In some places, because I'm cutting it so close to the edge, you can still see where the threads were. I don't mind that too much. I would rather take too little off than too much. And I'm okay with a little bit of, you know, texture on the edges, so long as it's not my wonky cutting. It's not looking too bad. For my purposes at the moment, I think I'm just testing rings for June. Obviously I'm cutting January, so I might skip ahead to June and cut all of June's pages and see how I get on with that. I might do May and June or something. So basically I need to switch into my second pile. I'm feeling pretty good about how the trimming is going so far, touch wood. And then after that I've cut those, I'll hole punch them and show you them in a binder. I would quite like to keep these, so I'm taking these out gently too. Obviously you saw me trim them, and then they're still very much sort of stuck to the glue side, so I'm just taking them apart one by one very gently. And I think that's my biggest advice. Like, this isn't as scary as you might think, but you do have to have patience and you need to be gentle. So like, don't rush, take your time, do everything in as small a quantity as you can. You don't need to cut huge reams of paper at once, like that gives you a higher margin for error. And once you take too much off, you can't put it back on. So these last ones probably need retrimming, so I'll set them to one side for now, and I'll focus on my pages for June. So this is the stack I have currently. There's some part of the first part of the year, and then I have all of June tucked in here. It's pretty straight. If I can get the pages to sit nicely, you can see that we have done a good job. I am happy with this so far. It's good. What I'm gonna do is hole punch one of the notes pages first, because I can't remember which of my two hole punches I use for A5. They're both kind of cheap ones, but I have one I prefer for smaller stuff and one I prefer for bigger stuff, and I can't quite remember. This is one of them. It's a Rapesco one. I might use this. Like, girlie, where is the A5? Oh, all the way in there. I feel like this is not the one I use. Ow, fuck. I just broke the top off my nail. So don't do that. Luckily I do have a nail appointment in like 3 hours time. But a casualty. I'm happy for it to be my nails and not the book. But ow. Don't use that hole punch. Use this one. This one is, I don't know, some kind of off-brand one I got on Amazon a few years ago. It's dusty because I've not been using it. Ow. And then what I'm gonna do is find the inside and punch and then check how that looks. Where's the goodness? Okay. Let's count the squares. 8 and a bit. Okay, that's not bad. So that is what it would be like punched, and then I need to find a binder. Okay, what I'm gonna do is just quickly pull everything out of this binder so you can see. I need to order another frosted one because I do like them, and this is kind of the style I would want to use, I think, for it. So I'm gonna pull these pages out. There's a lot going on in here. I think this was December's binder. Oh my god, it was Christmas. Let's not get distracted. Ouch. What I will maybe do is leave like a zip wallet and maybe like one sheet of paper just so we can see the difference. Or hopefully the not difference. Yeah, we did it. Oh my god, it worked. It looks good. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is hole punch the rest of my pages. Again, I might not film that just because it's something that makes me nervous and I tend to lean really far forward like a gremlin. But as I said, slow and steady. For hole punching, I think my last tip, you just want to make sure you're hole punching the binding side, and the easiest way to do that is just to check that the rounded corners are facing out. And then just to show you, because Wednesday, my little dog is very restless, this is how it is turning out. And as you can see, my hole punches, apart from that piece of paper that's stuck, my hole punches are also very well lined up, so the edges are pretty smooth and the punches are lined, and that I think is where I will leave it today, and then I'll order a binder. It will come in a couple of days, and then I'll show you the finished result in the binder and maybe work on a page so that you can see. It's a new day, and I thought I would show you where I got to. I pulled this binder out of storage. It's from when I was in A5 in like September to December time. I have this sticker on the front of the pocket. It's kind of wrinkled. And then I have like a vellum sheet, and then I have my pages. So I finished adapting it, or like deconstructing it, trimming it, whatever, and I managed to save most things. I did lose the 2025 calendar overview just because it's like glued. It's the first page, so it's proper glued in there. I could probably cut it out, but it would be shorter than the other pages, and I just don't know how fast I am. I guess the nice thing about potentially doing hobonichi cousin in rings is that I could add printed pages if I wanted to, so maybe I will find a really nice illustrated calendar or something. That's the only page I'm really sad about because it's kind of helpful to have the overview. I might try and trim it out and see how it looks, but it's pretty glued in there. Obviously the rest of my pages are all here. Some of them are punched and finished and some of them are not. I don't need them all since it's June already. I'll have to do this all again next month if I decide to stick with it. But it's kind of nice timing because it means I have a month to feel my way through it and decide if I want to set it up for the rest of the year. Moving through, I have the sort of like index pages, those are intact, and as you can see the holes are not too bad. I was able to use the same method for cutting these pages and the weekly pages as I did the daily pages. I don't know why I'm losing my voice already, I'm sorry. It's just 5 squares, so I counted 5 squares in and then I used my ruler, and that's a method that works because my ruler is so thick. But basically what you want to do is just find a square to use as your line because these are printed straight. So you want to pick a square somewhere and then line your ruler up to the square for every single page. And I did 5 for everything, and you can see they're level. All my pages are level, so it worked really well, which is nice because I was worried about keeping it even throughout. And that was kind of like the little cheat I found for doing it, I guess. So this is my index. I have some of the calendars, I didn't do all of them. I actually ripped one, so tragedy. I did get my nail fixed though, so that's nice. But I did lose, I think I lost like half of May or something for the calendars, and then I realised that I didn't need them all anyway, so I'm just missing April, May for whatever reason. I just decided not to include them. I might try and dig them out just for the sake of it, just because I have the rest of them. I didn't realise there was only 2 missing. But as you can see, I've got June and July, which to me is the most important thing. You can see my marks, I'll go through and erase them. And then after that I go into the weeks. These 2 can be disregarded. I might reuse the pages for something else. It's just the pagination. Obviously this one is on the back of July and this one is the very start of May. Obviously I won't use May, but I thought it would be nicer than having a completely empty book. I'll be starting from June, which is in here. And again, you can see that I'm only really losing 1 square to the hole punch, which is honestly fantastic. Like, it turned out way better than I expected. Not to jinx it or be a bad influence on anyone, but it was also much easier and it turned out better than I think I hoped it would, or that I could have hoped it would, or that I expected, whatever. Obviously be careful, go slow, but it does work and it's not actually that hard. I always think that if I can do it, anyone can do it, because I'm really bad at crafts. I draw, like I do art, but I am not like a craft person. I'm not good with, like, I don't know, crafts, especially when it comes to cutting things neatly and stuff like that. Stuff really stresses me out. So the fact that this turned out so well and was not actually that big of a headache, it was just time consuming, is kind of amazing. So I did it for science. I hope it was helpful to someone. Here is June, and then this is, oh, I'm missing, oh no, that would be the start of July though, so I would have my second effect, that's fine. Yeah, and then I have June in here. And then what I did was put June on top and I put May behind, because again, I'm probably not going to backfill May. I'm just going to start from June so I can start ahead this time. Sometimes I think I get too caught up in the idea of backfilling and it's just not necessary, but I'm going to start from June. So that's today. In the back, I don't have anything. It's a lie. I have stamps and stickers. These are just in here from last time, but it never hurts to have them. Okay, as you can see, my cutting is not too bad. It is fairly neat, and I am gonna work on my pages.